Hello and welcome to the Headless CMS series. Today I'm joined by Chris Cairns, a sales director at Kentico Kontent, one of the leading headless CMSs out there. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Ida. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. Good to see you. So, Chris, I talked about headless. Well, I keep talking about it for a while now, but I'm always explaining using my own words what headless is. What would be really good is if we could hear maybe from your perspective, from the vendor perspective, how do you explain headless CMS?
Yeah, great question. It's one that comes up a lot within Kentico Kontent. So if we think about a traditional CMS, or traditional content management system, by and large, they're often referred to as coupled. And what we mean by coupling is that we have a back office content repository, so somewhere to store the content, and a front end presentation layer. So when you think about headless, think about it as like a stick man. So you would have the legs, which would be the user interface, someone that the content editors can engage with, the main body section, which would be the content, the data, and the head, which is the presentation layer, the piece that the web visitor interacts with through their web browser. So what headless means is essentially it's the content management system, but without the presentation layer. So you don't have that tight coupling. The advantages that brings is that no longer are we creating content exclusively for the web, but we can give it multiple heads. So we can give it a web head, we can give it a chatbot head, we could give it a home assistant head. So different ways that your audiences will interact with that main body section being the content and the data from your business.
Okay, interesting. And then what kind of challenges are people usually trying to solve using headless CMS?
Yeah, well, again, that's really where we are now. The consumers are becoming more and more digitally aware. And although web is still a primary channel for most organizations, it's not the exclusive channel. So content can be, by its very nature, it can be cross-channel and cross-department. So we will see organizations presenting content for web, for mobile applications, for progressive web applications. It could be through social media, it could be through print, it can be through digital sign. So what you'll see is that a lot of organizations will have content repositories for all those channels. But then you have disjoin and you have essentially a bit of friction. So you don't have one central hub, you have multiple places to store that content. So what the headless content management system does is it creates a central unified content repository that can then be served across multiple websites, microsites. It can be across multiple channels, so web, print, app, chatbot. It really just opens up the world and gives businesses, brands, organizations the ability to get that single corporate voice and the consistent tone of voice across all the channels that they want to engage with their clients with.
Okay, that's interesting, because thinking about it historically, like website used to be in remit of IT, then through, I don't know, a decade later, it's now with marketing. But what you're just saying is, well, things have expanded and it's not just about web anymore, it's about general thing and the corporate voice. So does that mean maybe your targeted audience, not targeted audience, but actually does it mean that your users of the headless CMS are kind of are different and not really just marketing people? Or can you explain that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point you raise. By and large, a lot of it depends on the organization. So organizations will historically put web in the remit of IT. So yes, it might be an IT procurement process, but the actual day-to-day interaction will be membership officers, it'll be events coordinators, it will be e-commerce people within the organization. But of course, what we're seeing now in a lot of organizations is content strategists. So they are seeing that actually we need to see that it comes from communications, and by and large, they're seeing the communication strategy for the organization across all the channels. So ensuring that you've got that consistent tone of voice, that consistent brand messaging, whether someone engages through an e-commerce environment, through a membership portal, through an online form, you want to make sure you've got that consistency. So what we're seeing is essentially a new tranche of users, which is the content strategists, or essentially the communications team within a lot of businesses nowadays.
Okay, that's interesting, because what it means is that one single system can serve multiple departments across the whole organization. Obviously, that would be one of the key benefits that I've spotted so far. But are there any other benefits? I don't know, maybe integration or something else that you think is a really good side or benefit of Headless, or maybe even Kentico Kontent in this case?
Yeah, well, I think it's really, we're seeing technology as being an enabler for businesses. And by and large, we see certain trends and we see certain shifts in the market. If we wind back a few years, to the early days of web, that was very much handcrafted content management systems, or there wasn't really any content management system to speak of at all. It was using tools like Dreamweaver, Adobe Cold Fusion, and it was very much in the line of being the technical remit. So this was in the days where if marketing or communications wanted to do an update, they'd have to create a ticket, it would go to IT, and IT would update it. Of course, that really created a bottleneck within organizations. And so what we saw was the shift from these handcrafted, very technically focused ways of managing web content into the experiential content management system. So this was WYSIWYG, so what you see is what you get, drag and drop page builders, very much being very visual marketing led. And that really saw the advent of the suite. So the suite type CMS platforms, which are still very prevalent today and perfectly suitable for a lot of organizations. But what these look to do is they look to solve lots of problems. So not only will it manage the content operations, it will also look to manage your e-commerce requirements. It will look to manage your analytics. It will look to manage your marketing automation or your email marketing. So it's a very neatly packaged solution, and it does everything to a really great standard. But of course, suites aren't right for everyone, in the sense that you might need to be slightly more sophisticated on your email marketing requirements than what a suite platform might offer, or you might have no need whatsoever for email marketing or marketing automation. So instead, what we're seeing is that organizations are really wanting to go into this premise of pick and mix. So finding the right bits of software or bits of technology to pull together to meet the specific needs. So if you've got a commerce requirements, you add in commerce. If you don't have a commerce requirement, well, you leave it out. But it also means that you've got that flexibility, a bit like Lego, where you can just add new bits on as and when required. And what advantages that brings to businesses is agility. It also means that if one part of the system doesn't quite work for you, you just swap out that one part without having to replace absolutely everything. Because I think historically what we've seen is businesses putting in a suite and then 5-6 years later having to rip the whole suite out and put in another suite. And that's quite disruptive to a business. And this day of DevOps, agile, and really being much more flexible and creative is really what Headless, or by and large what we'd refer to as microservices, is the way that a lot of businesses are wanting to progress.
Yeah, because at the moment, how I see it is, if you go with a traditional type of a CMS, you get, I don't know, a e-commerce maybe functionality, but it might not be as good as what you would expect it to be, because, I don't know, maybe you have a certain type of requirements that platform can't meet. Then what it does, it makes you in a way think that you're paying for something that you don't necessarily need or want. But with the Headless, you can just go and pick best of breed or something that you think is the best for your company. So I completely understand and agree. And I love the principle of you being in control of the type of tools that you want to have around your tech suite.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the ways that I would describe it is if you think about the core pillars for a business, or the core functional requirements that a organization might look for. So they'll look for something to manage their content across multiple channels. They will look for something for their communication strategy, which would be around email or social or web chat. They might look for marketing automation. They might look for commerce. If you look at all of those as individual pillars, if you grade each pillar as, say, let's take an example, call it bronze, silver, gold, or level 1, 2, 3. You might have gold level requirements for e-commerce, but you might have silver level requirements for marketing automation. But of course, if you look at a suite, it might be gold across the board, top level enterprise, or it might be bronze across the board as entry level. But some organizations that might want to say, yeah, we're a membership body for argument's sake. So we need to have absolutely amazing content management. We have to have best of breed portals and event management, because that's the main focus of our business. So they would look for gold levels on all of those, on those particular pillars. But also they do some e-commerce, but the e-commerce relates to selling some t-shirts, or they might sell some, a little bit of merchandise. They're not Amazon. They've got a few units, in which case their e-commerce requirements are quite basic, or just starting out as a bit of proof of concept, in which case you could start out with a bronze level e-commerce platform, but as the business matures, upgrade that to silver, gold. I'll just use that as an analogy, but you can have that pick and mix approach.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think it's looking promising for end users in this case. As I said, I love the element where people have control and they'll be able to go and use the tools that they really want to use, which will give them best return on investment.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, it does create slight challenges, and I think there's it's not all absolutely perfect, because I mean, for some organizations, they want someone to tell them what they need, but you will know your business, your organization, your challenges, and what you're looking to achieve. But with a suite, it's quite easy, because if you have no idea or no premise, you would just pretty much run vanilla across the board. But I think as a business matures, they will realize that there are some shortcomings with vanilla or fairly standard processes, in which case they really want to work with a trusted advisor to help, to guide, to mentor, to say, okay, what are your options with regards to commerce? What are your options with regards to content operations? What are your options with regards to analytics? And really to find the one that works best for you.
Okay, brilliant. And then in terms of hosting and security, that's always a hot topic. Mm-hmm. How's Kentico Kontent doing in that regard?
Yeah, well, another great question. And really what we focus on as a business is really, because we're talking exclusively about content operations. So content as a strategic asset for the business being communicated across multiple channels. Now, when we look at that, if you look at a traditional content management system, and before they were called CMS, a lot of people would refer to them as WCMS, so Web Content Management System. Clue was in the title, designed for the web. And often a lot of these platforms, not exclusively, but a lot of these platforms would be software, and the responsibility for hosting, upgrading, hot fixes, patching would rest with you as the customer, or as the consumer, or your digital agency. They'd be responsible for that. But what we're seeing in this age of consumerism, and people don't really want to get involved in managing infrastructure, they'd much rather park that with the vendor. So, and we see that across the board. People are using streaming services for music and for videos. People are using subscription services for shopping. Likewise, we're seeing this transition to go from on-premise solutions where you would own everything and move towards SaaS, or software as a service. So in our world, and for Kentico Kontent, we host in Microsoft Azure. So we rely on Azure for because they're good at it. Other vendors might use AWS, so Amazon Web Services, or people could look to go open source. So open source, yes, you'd still have headless open source, but the responsibility for hosting would be with you. So you might want to go to Azure, AWS. There are lots of choices that you could go to. It's just what we'd like to do with Kentico Kontent through having SaaS is it's one less thing to worry about. You've got grown-up, mature enterprise scalability for hosting, but also it's one less thing to worry about. So we're responsible for patching, for upgrades, for ensuring that we've got backups. So we're doing hourly incremental backups, daily full backups, all the disaster recovery. So that's the hosting side taken care of. What organizations might still be responsible for is hosting the other services and the front-end application. But also when it comes to security, because they are completely decoupled, headless, we've separated the head from the main content repository. What that does is it actually creates a physical barrier and there's no direct line of sight between someone's web browser and your content management system. So as a result, by architecturally, we're actually introducing an extra layer of security, and with that, it brings better performance, better security, better scalability. So all things that a lot of our customers are looking for. No one wants the spinny wheel when they're trying to load a web page. And in this modern days of GDPR and PECR, we're not wanting to see that option of having security breaches.
Yeah, brilliant. And in terms of, let's say, exciting project or something that you guys are really proud that you've delivered in the last 12 months, is there something that you can just briefly explain on where you're using or where one of your customers is using Kentico Kontent, just to put things in context really and to give that sort of use case?
Yeah, great question. I mean, of course, our customers are wide and varied. So, we're a mature software business working globally across all sectors. So those clients range from membership organizations or institutions like the Chartered Institute of Taxation, right the way through to organizations like the R&A, stands for the Royal and Ancient. So they're the governing body for golf. So they're using Kentico Kontent for the rules of golf. So, you don't want to have any ambiguity. You think anyone that goes out playing golf, you don't want to have ambiguity on the golf course. They want to go to that one single unified source. What are the rules that we need to adhere to? But not only what are the rules, but to have the rules in multiple languages. So those, the rules in English, French, Italian, German, Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, the list goes on, but essentially having that one single version of the truth. Then we look at, people that are using it for commerce, wide and varied ones from people like Gas and Diamonds through to Electro Rent, or even people using it for recipes. So we work with an organization called Baking Mad. Definitely we're in 2021. We've had a year of, just over a year of COVID, lockdown. One thing which has boomed is the advent of home baking. So really using Kentico Kontent as a single central content hub, allowing that content to be shared across websites, but also people aren't at desktops. They want to have it on tablets or mobile phones to use home assistants like, like Amazon tools or Google tools to call out for recipes. So the list goes on. Really, creativity is what we love, and more we're seeing more and more customers coming up with more use cases. And by and large, it's those that are using it for multiple websites, multiple regions, multiple channels. They might not be using it today, but they might have aspirations. And a term that comes up a lot is future proofing. So they want to have it, but with an eye on the future to say, okay, but also when we look at the future, we don't know what's next. Things go in fads. We're not all walking around, I wear glasses, but we're not all walking around with Google Glass. It was a bit of a fad from a few years ago, but we don't know what takes off. If we look back to the 90s, we thought computers were a fad and they were going to disappear, and look where we are now. So really making sure that organizations can embrace those new channels without having to replace all their technology, and definitely without having to replace or rework all of their content.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, what you've just mentioned about the baking website, I've definitely noticed that. I use Alexa a lot, so that search just while I'm in the kitchen, it makes sense. It makes sense in terms of, helping, just being efficient rather than me just typing things out on the phone. So
yeah, and it's an interesting point you make, because these home assistants, I won't say one because I've got one behind me and she starts chirping at me, but having these home assistants, initially they're a bit of a fad, and if I'm being brutally honest, when I first had it, it was used to control the Christmas tree lights, because the switch was down in the corner and it was easier just to speak to a home assistant to say lights on, lights off, and that's about all they were used for. But I think as they've become more part of our daily life, people starting to use them more and more. And definitely if we look at different demographics and really understanding your business and your audience, and when we're creating the content strategy, we don't have to think about what we would use in our age or our demographic, but understanding who are our customers, who are the primary users. And if your demographic are ones that would be more at home using speech search rather than typing search, then yes, certainly you need to be looking at making sure that your content is accessible, making sure that it's found and retrieved, ready for things like these home assistants.
Excellent. And I think just last question from my end, in terms of Kentico Kontent, where are you guys now in terms of maturity? Obviously, you've been around for several years now. Mm-hmm. And also, how's the roadmap looking in terms of what's the future going to bring? Well, we never know, but at least there's always a roadmap in terms of what Kentico is looking to deliver in the next year or so.
Yeah, no, it's I think if we look at any technological advancement, typically they follow a traditional bell curve. So if you allow me to sort of, if I can paint it with my finger, like a standard inverted U shaped curve. We are now in about 6 years into the development of our headless content management system called Kentico Kontent. And I would say that where we are now is into really the early majority phase. So I think if you look at any typical hype cycle or progression curve, for say something like camera film or compact discs, they're into decline. Yes, they'll always be around, but they went through the initial innovation. They went into early majority, late majority, into laggards, and then slowly into decline. We're in that hyper-growth phase. So we've gone through these bleeding edge, very early adopters, and it's becoming more and more mainstay. So it's not completely new to a lot of people. You mentioned that you've been talking about headless for a while. And I think we're now seeing it that a lot of organizations are seriously considering it as the new way that they want to work. I think by and large, because they see the advantages of SaaS versus on-premise, they see the advantages of multiple channels, they see the advantages being brought around by scalability, security, performance, all positive elements. And they can also look at references. So they can see lots of organizations that are using it and using it very successfully. And now they're starting to move on. What that brings to us is that we're seeing at least a doubling year on year with regards to number of new clients coming on board, and probably even slightly more than that. What we see with regards to the innovation is I don't think it will ever be finished. I mean, if we say it's finished, then yeah, we might as well give up. So we're constantly innovating. What that means for our roadmap is really looking to bridge that gap. I think for a long time, if we look at technology, if we look back to the days of Dreamweaver and Adobe Cold Fusion, that was very much in the domain of the technical person. So that was very technologically focused. If we look towards experiential WYSIWYG, that was very non-technical focused. So it was geared towards the marketeer, the business user. In the very early headless CMSs, they went back and went very developer focused. Whereas now, actually, what we're doing at Kentico Kontent is to really start to pull that more towards the business user. So giving the usability, the tools that business users want to be able to use for collaboration, to get a preview of their content, whether that content be in the website, in the mobile application, very visual, difficult to visualize in a chat bot or a home assistant, but we're still working on ways that you can start to bring those elements to life and let people test and see how it will operate. So a lot of the innovations that we're doing is to make sure that we can be attractive to the technological user, so they can use whichever technology they like. So JavaScript, Ruby, .NET, PHP, we don't mind, we support them all, but also making sure that it's attractive for the content user, the marketing person, the business user, who's the person that needs to sit in front of a keyboard and collaborate with their colleagues, definitely when we're still working remotely. And so that's what our roadmap's like. It's constantly evolving, and we even published that on the website to give people confidence about what we're planning for the future, but also what we've recently developed.
Yeah, that's great insights, to be fair, from any vendors. If they can share that with regular people, end users and customers, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, our website is www.content.ai. In the footer, we've got our public-facing roadmap, so we talk about our company vision, what we've got coming forward. So we would typically look 3 to 6 months out. We won't talk about what we're going to do in 3 to 5 years' time, because our developers are good, but none of them went to Hogwarts. So we don't actually have a crystal ball. We don't know what the future holds for us. And I think we need to be, we can have like long-term aspirations, but we don't crystallize those. And I think what we look to do is to crystallize what the immediate needs are in 3 to 6 months, but also we solicit ideas from customers. So long-standing customers, or even people that are looking to join our team at Kentico Kontent, what would make your life easier? Because if it makes your life easier, it's probably a good idea, or a good indication that it'll make other people's lives easier. And that's what we're looking for. We just really want to be the best way for people to work with content, and just make it nice, easy, seamless, and intuitive.
Great. Well, I think this was a really good chat, very insightful in terms of general headless, but also insightful from the Kentico Kontent side as well. I don't think I've got any further questions for you, Chris, but I'd like to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
If you think maybe you forgot to add or mention something, maybe now's the chance. But
yeah, all I would say is, for anyone that's watching, thank you for taking the time to listen to the chat. And if you'd like to know more, please speak to Ida at GRN. But also with regards to Kentico Kontent as a platform, we offer free trials, we offer webinars. So not only we're a software vendor, but we have lots of education around how people or how organizations can help to create business cases, or to start to understand how a good, strong content strategy can help to accelerate a business. So we're not here just to say, here's our software, this is how it works for you. By and large, a lot of the decision to go headless will be born out of a particular business requirement. And really what we look to do is to help you understand what those business requirements are, and then from that to see where technology could form as an enabler for that. So I would say if anyone has an interest in that, please feel free to contact us via the Kentico Kontent website. But by and large, it'd probably be better to speak to Ida and her team there at GRM.
All right. Well, good stuff. Thank you very much, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Again, if you've got any questions or anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and Chris and myself will come back to you. Thanks for watching.